This is Michael of the Grim Life Collective sitting here with Andrea Perron. Now, you and your 5 sisters moved in to a farmhouse back in 1971 in Rhode Island with your mother and father. And not knowing at the time that it would basically change your life.
Yeah.
And thank you for sitting here with me today.
Thank you. It's wonderful to welcome you into my circle of friends.
Thank you. It's a beautiful night too. It's got
It is.
a little bit of thunder and lightning, some rain.
It's a perfect night to do this. It's wonderful.
There's a few different questions for you,
Sure.
really. What we try to do here at the Grim Life Collective is to try to separate fact from fiction, but not bog down our viewers with a whole bunch of factoids. Anybody and everybody can go online or read a book and talk to somebody and read all kinds of interviews and watch interviews. But one thing that people can't do, most people, is to actually see a place for themselves and get that experience. In about a week's time, my wife and I are going to be in Rhode Island visiting the house that you grew up in. And there's a whole bunch of crazy stories about this place.
Yeah.
There's a movie that came out, everybody knows it, it's called The Conjuring.
Right.
That is loosely,
very loosely,
based off of your family's time in that house. Mm-hmm. But if I remember correctly, if I'm understanding this right, it's from the Warrens' point of view.
Yes, the film, all the films are based on the case files of Ed and Lorraine Warren. They just happened to start with our story first. And the reason that they did was because Ed, prior to his death, had described our experience, my family's experience in our old farmhouse, as the most, and these are his words, the most intense, most compelling, most disturbing, and most significant of all the different cases that they studied, all of the different investigations they conducted over more than 40 years. So on his deathbed, he had asked Lorraine, his wife, if she would make sure, while she was still earthbound, to make sure that our story got told. When we moved away from the farm, Mrs. Warren sought us out. I mean, it was before Google. I don't know how she found us, but she did. And she offered my parents really a boatload of money to tell our story, whether in print, on film, because my mother had said she didn't want, anything to do with that. When last we saw the Warrens, which was in 1974. Well, Mrs. Warren said, this is life-altering money, and so you need to talk with your husband about it. Well, that night, in the house, the new house that my family had bought on the new farm that my family had found in Cherokee County, Georgia, my mother was attacked in the cellar of the house while she was doing a load of laundry. And it freaked her out so badly that when Mrs. Warren called back the next day, she said, absolutely not. The answer is no. Please don't contact me again.
Wherever I come, bad luck is coming my way. Wherever I go, hard luck is there to stay. Good luck never stays a day. A bad luck's always coming my way.
Today we're doing something a little extra special, something a little extra haunting this Halloween season. Today we're visiting the famous house, or infamous house, however you want to say it, from the movie The Conjuring, the real house that inspired the movie The Conjuring, where Andrea Perron, who we've recently become friends with, her and her family lived in this house for 10 years, and based off of the Warrens' case files, gave us that horrifying, terrifying, spooky tale. The Conjuring. Right now we're walking up to the house. That's it right there to the left of your screen. But like everything that we've encountered here in New England, just walking through the woods, Jessica and I, we do it every chance we get. So we decided to park on the far corner of the property and walk up to the front of the house. You definitely don't get things like this out in California.
No, that smell, I love it.
You feeling okay?
So we're standing close to the house, talking with people who run the tours here. And ever since I set foot on the actual property of the house, even from walking up just now, it keeps changing as I get closer to the house. And I started getting a little paranoid, panicky, because I can just feel this like deep impression in my throat that was making it hard for me to swallow. And it literally felt just like now, like a thumb pressing on the inside of my throat like that, and I couldn't swallow. Meanwhile, Michael and the people are like, you know, introducing each other and, you know, saying hellos, and I'm just kind of standing there like, I don't know if I should mention anything. I don't want them to think that I'm being a scaredy cat or paranoid, but why? And then as soon as it was there, it was gone. It was like, you know, 5 seconds worth, and then just my palms were really sweaty, which I know is a sign of anxiety, but my heart rate is fluctuating a lot stepping onto the property, and I've had like the best day until stepping onto the property here, as far as like my moods and my heart health. I think it's gotten my nerves going a little bit.
Now, I just want to be clear, we're not here to do any kind of ghost hunting. Both Jessica and I believe, and we're going to hear some ghost stories, tales of experiences inside this house. But we're here just to document what it feels like for us and what happened in each and every room. Look at that skeleton. Man, we should have picked one of those up whenever we had the opportunity. Like, where would we put it though?
Where would it go?
I don't know, but it's pretty freaking amazing.
We have an apartment in Hollywood. It's not going to fit.
I'm liking this long walk up to the house. It kind of prepares us. At least I feel. Who knows? I mean, we can go inside this house and it can affect us in a pretty bad way. I'm sorry. Yeah, Jessica, you heard that.
I'm okay. I feel fine.
All right, before we go inside, I want to introduce you to technically two of our hosts, Mandy and Eric. First and foremost, thank you for inviting us to this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
You're very welcome.
Very welcome.
And happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Now, my understanding is you have a paranormal group. Tell us a little bit about it and what you guys do and your experiences with this house.
Well, I founded Rhode Island Paranormal back in 2007, and we've been doing a lot of investigations throughout different homes, and we had an opportunity to meet the owners of this conjuring house, and we ended up doing an investigation with them. And since then, we come in and toured the house a few times, and it's got amazing activity. The history of the house is incredible, and the activity is always off the charts. I mean, we've always experienced something every time we've come in here. It's an amazing place.
And Jen and Corey are probably the two of the nicest people we've ever met. So.
They're great.
Can't wait to meet them.
Yes, they're amazing.
We're going to attempt to do something that I think might turn out to be really cool. Now, if you remember the movie The Conjuring, one of the opening scenes, whenever the Perron family in the movie, move into the house.
That long sequence.
The long sequence, this unedited shot, we're going to attempt to do the same thing. We're going to walk through the front door that the family would have walked through when they moved into the house. And we're going to move throughout the entire house, recreating, according to Andrea, the steps she took when she carried the first moving box into the house and the first time she witnessed something paranormal. A couple weeks ago, we did an interview with Andrea Parent in her home. She invited us into her home and I sat down with her for almost 3 hours talking about this house in great detail. You're going to see, I'm a little nervous, you're going to see clips of her talking about this house in certain areas that pertain to that interview.
Okay.
Game?
Okay.
You haven't walked through the house yet.
No,
Just
well,
parts
I mean,
of it.
I walked into the house, but
Okay.
I haven't walked the house.
But you haven't
Yeah,
gone
no.
upstairs to the warm room,
Uh-uh.
Andrea's bedroom, and different things. Okay. We're not going to bog you down with a whole bunch of facts. We're just going to let the house speak for itself. We're just going to tell you a few different things about
See how we feel.
the house, right?
Yeah,
So,
I'm a little nervous.
fingers and bones crossed.
Okay,
Here we go.
all right.
I walked in with a big box off the back of the truck. It was in the middle of a swirling ice storm that we moved because, you know, when you're good old hardy Yankees and it's moving day, you move. You can't let the weather get you down. Not in Rhode Island, you can't. But it seemed to take forever to get there, and when we finally got there, Dad threw open the back of the moving van and handed me a box marked kitchen. Mom had gone in the side kitchen door with my baby sister, April. But the other 4 of us were big enough and strong enough to be able to help. I walked into the door leading into the parlor and then took a hard right into the dining room, and Mr. Kenyon was packing up the last of his belongings from the china cabinet. It's kind of built right into the wall. Beautiful.
Right now we're starting the video on the front porch. The car straight ahead, that little parking lot, the family would have pulled in right there and carried their moving boxes right through this front door. How convenient the door's open. We left it open.
A little open because I didn't know about the locking mechanism, just in case.
So allow the camera to adjust.
I'm gonna close it.
There we go. Now you can leave it open or you can shut it. So this room right here is the first room that they would have walked into, carrying the moving boxes. Now when we sat down with Andrea, I asked her a couple different times, when you first walked into the house, how did you go? She said that she carried the first moving box in through the front door that we just came through, into this room. Now if you look right behind Jessica, there's that built-in curio cabinet. She mentions that in the interview. And she says that right in the center of the room, there was a table. And Mr. Kenyon, the guy who they bought the house from, was in this room. She said hello.
And I saw him and I said, "Good morning, Mr. Kenyon." And I put the box down on the table and we chatted for a moment. And then I turned to walk through the room into the front foyer, into the kitchen, to bring that box to my mother. And suddenly I saw a man standing there. But he looked as flesh and blood to me as you do. And as I passed him, I said, "Good morning, sir." And he looked right through me like he didn't even see me, and he was just fixated watching Mr. Kenyon pack. I must have figured he was a neighbor. I asked my mom who he was. She said, "There's nobody with Mr. Kenyon. His son's on the way, but he's not here yet."
And what was really interesting about it, as the family was moving in, her sisters saw him as well.
Wow.
He was flesh and blood, just like you're standing there, Jessica, but he shouldn't have been there. They all acknowledged him. They all said, "Hey, did you see that man?
Did
you
he say
see
hi
that
back?
man?" He didn't.
Oh,
He just stood there.
curious.
And meanwhile, my sister Christine came in with a box, and she saw him too,
Oh, wow.
and went into the kitchen after she greeted Mr. Kenyon, politely passed the man standing in the room, and said, "Mom, who's the man with Mr. Kenyon?" And my mother's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm sure we just assumed it was a neighbor who had stopped by to say goodbye, but he appeared to her as well. And then Cindy walked in, and as she passed him, she saw him as translucent and asked Mom what was going on with the man in the dining room. And at which point, I'm sure my mother just threw her hands up in the air. She was trying to get boxes unpacked. She was still packing Mr. Kenyon's things that were still in the cupboards of the kitchen. He wasn't nearly ready to move yet. We had to unpack our boxes and use the paper and the boxes to pack him up. He wasn't ready to go. So she kind of ignored it, and then Nancy came in and leaned over to her and said, "Sit. Did you see that man with Mr. Kenyon?" "I did, but he just disappeared." And that's when we knew there was something very different and unusual about this house. And somehow we knew not to say anything about it. A few hours later, after the moving men had brought all the beds upstairs and everything was spread out all over the house, and we had to use that van to move Mr. Kenyon's belongings out, he took my father for a walk and said, "Roger, for the sake of your family, leave the lights on at night."
Now, you want to know something else about this room? In the movie The Conjuring, the mother, the Warrens come,
Right.
and they do an exorcism in the basement.
Correct.
All Hollywood.
Yes, we know that.
What was performed was a seance, and it was in this room. Now, in Andrea's book, Andrea Perron, who was the oldest daughter, she is the oldest daughter, she mentions that during this seance, she saw things happen. She saw her mom act in weird ways, talk in weird languages that she didn't know, and it scared her and it scarred her for life. Now, here's the part that really gets me. I already walked through this house, Jessica,
Yeah.
and I found it calm except for one spot.
Okay. Are you going to tell me? No, I'll try and see if I can guess.
Now, I'll tell you. 'Cause I got goosebumps just thinking about it. She has said that while the exorcism, while the seance was going on right here, she was witnessing it,
From here.
she was standing on the other side of this wall right here at the base of the steps, watching what was happening in the other room. Now, what gave me chills was thinking, so we met her. We sat down with her. We
She's so
talked to her.
sweet.
Very sweet,
Very sweet.
a lot
I wanted to hug
older,
her.
right?
Like every 5 minutes, I wanted to give her a hug.
And I just kept picturing this woman that we met, this older woman, 11 years old, I think she was, crouched behind this wall, terrified,
Right?
watching.
Strange things happening, and you know.
Now, there's even one thing she was saying that at one point, the chair that she was sitting in, kind of, I wouldn't say it levitated, but it kind of
Her
was,
chair here?
no, her mother,
Oh, okay.
was kind of thrown across the room, and she thought that her mother died.
Oh.
And she was so terrified that she couldn't do anything, and she watched her father and the Warrens just doing what they're doing. I mean, can you imagine that?
You probably don't believe your very eyes.
You know, we talk about walking history, but just imagine being an 11-year-old girl crouched right here in a house that's been terrifying you and your family. They lived here for 10 years.
Yeah, that's crazy. That in the movie The Conjuring, they make it seem like everything happened over the period of a couple months, if not a couple weeks. So quiet.
Some would say my mother was possessed very briefly during a seance that went so horribly wrong that it almost cost her her life. But my mother was not possessed. My mother was attacked by an entity that entered our home or was either there already or entered our home. I have a tendency to think it was the latter. And the Warrens had insisted that my mother was oppressed and on the verge of possession, and that this was an absolutely necessary thing to happen. Michael, it was the worst experience of my life. I was hiding in the hallway with my sister Cindy. As it was transpiring, she was collapsing in my arms. I was afraid that her body weight was going to pull me forward through the door as this was occurring. It happened over the shortest amount of time you can imagine, maybe 2 to 3 minutes. My father didn't want anything to do with it. He didn't want the Warrens there. He thought that this was a disaster waiting to happen, that it was tempting fate. I mean, at that point, he had to admit that there was something going on in the house because it was happening to him as well. But he thought this was a very dangerous thing to do. And as far as I'm concerned, the medium that they brought in a priest, a medium, a sound specialist, cinematographers, you know, a whole crew of people showed up at our house, basically unannounced. The Warrens had called ahead. You know, there were no cell phones then. They called from their home in Connecticut and then drove to Rhode Island. And when my dad came home that night from work, my mom told him that they were coming, and he had just come off of like a week-long road trip. He was exhausted. He didn't want anything to do with it. And when they all showed up at once and suddenly our house was full of paranormal investigators, his head blew off. He's like, oh no, we're not doing this. This is not happening in my house. It's not. And 4 of the 5 of us were there. Nancy had gone to spend the night with a friend. It was a Friday night. But all the rest of us were there. It was in August of 1973. What happened that night fundamentally altered every single person who witnessed it. What happened that night made me understand that there is pure, unadulterated evil in the world. And whatever it was that was conjured by the medium as she threw open wide the doors to the netherworld and invited everything in so that she could determine who the culprit was in the house. When she did that, something targeted my mother. And she was in agony. She was sitting in a very big captain's chair at the table. Her body drew up into a ball to the extent that you would expect to hear her bones breaking. She started, first her head dropped, like she had gone to sleep. And then she threw her head back and her eyes popped open and she started looking wild-eyed around the room like she didn't know who any of these people were. And then she started to growl and howl and cry. And then she started to speak in a language that does not exist on this planet. And then the table levitated and flew back down onto the floor. All the candles that they had lit went out instantly. Her chair levitated about probably 18 inches off the floor, and in a split second, my mother, in the chair she was sitting in, was tossed from the middle of our parlor, from the middle of our dining room into the middle of our parlor. And when the chair hit the floor and her head struck the floor, I was quite certain that I had just seen my mother pass away. Everybody else thought the same thing. My father ran to her side. Ed Warren tried to stop him from going to her, and my father turned around and punched him right in the face, brought him to his knees, blood pouring out of his nose and his mouth. It was a mess. And he went to my mother's side, and she was unconscious, but I didn't know she was unconscious. Cindy's crying and collapsing in my arms. We're standing behind a door that's only open that much, so as Mom got thrown into the other room, we pushed it open a little more because the lights were out, nobody could see us. And I could see my mother laying on the floor motionless, and my father hovering above her, and Lorraine running to her side. and the priest over in the corner of the room literally quaking in terror, and the medium having collapsed unconscious on the table.
Let's go to this next room. This room right here was her sister's room. Now, Andrea being the oldest, there's us, hello, wave to the camera. Now, Andrea being the oldest, she had her own room. This was where her sisters slept.
Okay.
Now, here is our next ghostly
I
tale.
love that there's little windows between the rooms. That was really sweet.
They would spend the night in here. Now, all the girls witnessed things. They saw things. They heard things. Now, in the movie, Bathsheba, the witch was the one that was haunting them.
Right.
But according to the parents, it is not true.
Right.
It's all Hollywood. They believe that the woman who was haunting them was a woman, last name Arnold, who not on this property, I don't think. I think it was somewhere near here. She hung herself. She committed suicide. Now,
She'd ever lived here, though.
no, not on the property.
Okay.
So I point this out because all the girls have reported that the figure, the woman that would come and talk to them in the middle of the night or move things, she had a broken neck.
Okay.
And they lived here for 10 years and all kinds of different research. It's the only one that makes sense. Now, I know it kind of sounds a little like the haunting of Hill House, right?
Weren't they? Yeah, bent neck lady. Yeah. But that is what happens when you hang yourself.
Right.
You break your neck. That's how you die. Or you strangulate, one or the other.
Now, I'm going to back up into Andrea's room.
Okay.
And you can follow me out this way. Now, the girls, Andrea's sister, the sisters, I should say, they were scared so much every single night that they might as well have had their room in here with her. They spent almost every night sleeping in this room with their older sister.
Within a couple of nights of living in the house, I had the room right over the parlor. My sisters, Cindy and Christine, were sharing the middle bedroom, and Nancy and April were sharing the bedroom over the kitchen. I don't know if it happened the first night, I don't recall. But I know by the second night that we lived in the house, Cindy came and crawled into bed with me and asked if she could stay with me. And I thought she was just freezing. I mean, I had never been so cold in my life, Michael. I had never been so cold in my life. A clapboard house, hundreds and hundreds of years old, with zero insulation. And we had come from a nice, cozy, compact little Cape Cod in Cumberland that had a really good heating system, and none of us had ever known that kind of discomfort before.
Right.
So when Cindy came and asked if she could come to bed with me, and she crawled in, I threw the covers back and just said, well, of course, honey, come on in. And she said, I'm scared. I said, what are you scared about? She said, I hear voices in my room all around my bed. Well, Christine talked in her sleep sometimes, so I just assumed that it was Christine having a dream and verbalizing. And she said, no, it's not Chris. She's sound asleep. She said, I hear voices all around the bed, and they got louder and louder. I don't know how you couldn't have heard them because all the doors were open between the bedrooms. And you'll see that when you go to the house. The house was built on to over time.
Okay.
So there's actually an outdoor window on an inside wall between my bedroom and the center bedroom.
Okay.
So we left all the doors open because my parents said, you know, let the heat circulate the best that you can. And there was no heat upstairs. There were just a couple of wrought iron vents in the floor from the first floor up to the second so that the heat could rise. I thought I was going to freeze to death, honest to God. So I just assumed Cindy was coming to bed with me because she wanted my body heat. And when she started telling me that she heard voices, I had to ask her, you know, what are you hearing? And she said, they're all talking at once. They're all saying the same thing at once, over and over and over again. And her, you know, poor little thing, she was only 8 years old. Her voice was trembling. And I asked her what they were saying, and she said, there are 7 dead soldiers buried in the wall. There are 7 dead soldiers buried in the wall. And they said it over and over and over, and it got louder and louder until she literally put the pillow up over her ears to try to stop it from happening. And when that didn't work, she bolted out of the room and came to me.
Something else, right?
The house is definitely a lot more spacious than you think it is. It's not very tall, but houses weren't back then.
Thought I heard something over there, like in a voice, and I was like, wait a second, there's people downstairs.
Yeah.
But I thought somebody was walking this way.
I didn't hear it.
It's so quiet that if you were to like hear something, it would almost be like a scream.
Yeah, I mean, I can hear there's 4 other people in the house. They're in one room at the far end of the house, and I hear them because I can tell the direction it's coming, but this house is eerily quiet for as old as it is. Most of those houses back then were very drafty, which this one is too, but it's the wood, the materials that were used are very insulating, and it's like being in a sound room, or a soundproofed room, I should say.
Like I said earlier, I walked through this house with Corey. Corey and Jen are the current owners. And we walked through, and I told him what I knew of the house, and he confirmed it and cleared up some things, some different questions before I took you guys in here. And you waited downstairs in the library, a very quiet library. And after walking through here, did you feel anything? What's your impressions?
I mean, I've felt discombobulated ever since I walked into the house, but for me, I do have little equilibrium issues, so I'm wondering if what I'm feeling is because the floors are very uneven, they're very warped, or they're slanting a lot. Usually that won't right away make me feel strange, but if I walk it for a while, I can start to feel a little off. Funny enough, where I felt the most sensations, for lack of a better word, is in the library and on the property, not in the house.
Okay.
But I have felt like my ear felt clogged up at one point, and I caught myself doing it when we came out of the warm room. I was like, it's like, why does someone, it feels like I have cotton in my ear, you know? In the library, it felt like my head was in a vice, just like someone was squeezing my head, or I had like a heavy pressure just like really on the sides of my temples. And I got really woozy down there, and I wasn't moving. I was standing still in one spot, and I just felt like I wanted to twirl because I was being twirled. Like I was trying to move with my body the way it wanted to be moved because it was being moved in that way. I don't know how else to explain it. It's like my head was spinning, so my body wanted to spin with it. I kept getting the urge to do this in the library. Or like just for, you know, I kept getting the urge to do this in the library because I thought it would help my dizziness stop,
Right.
if anything. And I mean, yeah, I love twirling. You've seen all of our videos. That's the thing I like to do, but I've never felt my body physically want to be compulsed to twirl, which was kind of weird. But, and then in the driveway, I felt like I had
The neck.
I felt like I had a thumb pressing into my throat.
When I walked through here with Corey, I mentioned how calm I felt. Like I felt so at peace. Like
Yeah.
I felt like I was laying down in a very comfortable down kind of bed. And he was very quick to say, you know, it's there's nothing evil here. You know, there's activity, there's something going on, but there's nothing evil here. I walked up those steps with him. I felt like
You said heavy.
like I was being squeezed.
Squished.
Like I had like you would imagine
Something heavy sitting on your chest.
like pressing, like Giles Corey from Salem, that like pressing with rocks. I felt like I had a rock on my chest that was pushing me down.
I felt that
I don't
when we
feel it
first
now.
got on the property. My chest felt very heavy. I had a bit of chest pain and stuff, and it just kind of kept getting worse until we got to the top of the property in the garage or the driveway, and that's when I felt this. Because it felt like that, like deep in my tissue, like next to my skeleton, my throat, yeah. And I couldn't swallow. It was very strange. I don't feel like anything's attacking me. I just want to put that on record. I don't feel like someone's strangling me or anything like that, but it's strange sensations that I don't normally experience.
What if that neck feeling, a broken neck?
Well, I mean, it would have been like right here. I don't know if that's even like...
I mean, I don't know how a neck breaks.
No.
Yeah, but like, what if
'cause most
that
people put
neck
it-
sensation?
Sorry, just...
So if you guys don't know this, Jessica, we don't claim to be psychic. We don't claim to be powers or anything like that. But Jessica's very sensitive to these kind of things.
I seem to be.
Yeah.
I've never claimed anything. I've never been like, ooh, I'm sensitive. Not making fun of anybody who does claim that or feel that way, but I seem to get sensations when I'm around certain things, and sometimes I just know things without anybody telling me anything and having no reason or way to explain why I know what I know, and I know it for fact. And then I tell somebody and they're like, how do you know this? And I'm like, I just do. Personal facts about people sometimes. I have very weird, I'll have sworn to have seen a film that has not been out yet, and everyone's like, no, that's not coming out until tomorrow. I'm like, we watched this together on my couch, so I know it's been out. And then everyone's going, no, that's not out. And I will tell the entire film, and they're like, it doesn't come out until next month. And I'm like, dude, listen, I've been there already, okay? I've seen this, so I don't know what to tell you. Like, weird things like that, I don't know. It's not explained, and sometimes I just feel silly telling these stories because I don't know how to explain them.
Jessica's feeling an overwhelming urge to open the closets and look inside.
The handles are so low. I'm 5'3", and even I have to reach down to where the handles are. That's peculiar. I don't know why, but every time we walked near this room, I felt it was very important that I open the closet. I don't know if I'm supposed to go in the closet, or if somebody wanted to come out of the closet. Ooh, right.
Well, imagine this. You know, you had these girls in this room that were terrified night after night that they couldn't sleep in here. You know, maybe they hid in this closet,
Or they played in here.
right?
If I was them, I would have played in here. Yeah. Because it connects.
It's like a fort.
Yeah, so the door that's on the other side of the bed opens to the other side of the closet. I feel like games were played in here, probably.
Now the fun part. Do you remember whenever we were working at the haunted house or an actual haunted house in Savannah, Georgia, and every night after all the tours, we would have to go through the house and turn off the lights?
Yeah.
It was always the scariest part for us.
It was.
Sadly,
I was terrified of it.
we don't have to turn off any lights here, but this is like the last chance. If there is something here and you do want to be known, now's the time to make yourself known to us. I'm gonna take that as a no. All right. Well, Jessica was behind me.
I'm right here.
Okay, I thought I lost you for a second. Watch your head and your steps. Whew.
This is like the scariest part, is the stairs.
Just be careful.
My old house had the same stairs, vertical.
The one you grew up in?
Yeah, it was very old too.
One more walk in the kitchen here. So there's a bathroom back there. It looks pretty modern. I'm guessing that that's been renovated. Don't know if that's originally where the bathroom was. Here's the kitchen.
I have to say that the house, being that it's mostly in its original state, is not nearly as cold as I thought it was going to be for this time of year.
Right?
It's very windy outside. It's about 40 degrees, 45 degrees. And I don't feel that bad in here.
At the time, this wasn't the library. So,
Is it not?
at the time whenever the parents were living here, no, it wasn't the library.
Oh.
But, so I came downstairs from the tour with Corey. And I walked right past here. I didn't see you. I didn't hear you all. 3 people in this room.
Yeah.
What were you doing in this room?
I think at first we were just waiting for you to go upstairs, and we wanted to be out of the way so that you wouldn't hear our footsteps and stuff, somewhere we can just hang out in and not make any noise. And of course we talked about paranormal things and experiences, and they were telling me about, they had these kind of, for lack of a better word, phone calls that they had done through the internet on their phone, that they had gotten some spirits responses with that were actually dead family members of theirs. So the things that they said in these internet calls or Zoom calls were very specific to them, that really you wouldn't know it unless you were part of the family. And they were playing those messages for me. It was very eerie. Very eerie.
Right now we're standing in the basement of the farmhouse, and I do want to point out that yes, in the movie The Conjuring, there was an exorcism that happened in the basement, but not in real life. That was all Hollywood. Once again, all Hollywood. Instead, it was a seance upstairs. But as paranormal investigators, a lot of things have been heard. A lot of things have been seen down here in the basement. And there's one thing in particular that we want to show you guys, and it is disturbing as all heckins. And it's over here in this room. Now over here, as you can see, there's a table here. They do hold some seances in here, and I'm going to walk around the room first before I show you. Now, if you remember, I did mention that Andrea and her sisters, they saw a couple different spirits. There was a little boy, but there was, the main one was a woman that had a broken neck. Well, in our tour of the house, we were shown this, and it's over here in this cabinet. And I asked them if they remember which little girl drew it, and nobody knows. But you see that right there? An old piece of furniture down here in the basement. There's a child's drawing of a woman with a bent neck. That gives me chills. I mean, I don't know what to say. Baby Goal, I noticed you're being a little quiet over here in the corner. Are you okay?
I'm okay.
Yeah?
Just, it's hard to breathe down here. It's extremely musty. There's a lot of moisture in the air. It's very constricting in the chest.
Yeah, you can feel it.
Yeah. I don't know if that's, you know, supernatural energies or anything like that, but just, it's an old cellar, and they're very musty.
Yeah.
And there's actually an old well in the floor, so there's lots of moisture in the air.
As Jessica was saying, yes, there is a well down here that's open. It's very dark down there. I'm not going to get really close because watch, I'll probably drop the camera, and I ain't going to do that. And she was saying there's a lot of moisture here, and she's right. I mean, on the other side of this wall is earth. I mean, we are ground level. I mean, if I lift the camera up and look out this window, here we go. And you can see the ground, there we go. Now let's go take a look at the rest of this basement. I've never been inside a basement this big for a single house before. A couple of different rooms. This is definitely creepy. Watch your step. And it just keeps going. Look at this.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And there are steps.
God.
Now they did say that these steps will take us all the way up to the kitchen, so.
Oh, I know what door this is. Okay.
Yeah?
That's the door I originally thought we were going to go into.
Just watch your head. Okay. So that leads up to the kitchen. We're not going to go through that one.
The kitchen hallway, I believe.
Okay. What do you think, baby girl? Walking the entire length of the basement, feeling anything?
That's snakeskin.
Oh God, it is snakeskin.
Oh, that's its face.
Oh, that's crazy cool.
That's creepy. In the room with the drawing and the open well, I really felt like I was being crushed. Like, I just thought it was moisture in the air and like the dampness and the dankness of the cellar. But as soon as I walked the threshold out of that room, I felt fine. I felt a lot better.
Walking through the historic cemetery here, and there's somebody buried here that plays a very crucial part of the story of The Conjuring. Well, the Hollywood version of The Conjuring. And that is the witch Bathsheba. Now she's buried in this small cemetery. And sadly, over the years, probably because of the movie, more than likely because of the movie, her stone was stolen. But we're going to go, we're going to pay our respects and talk a little bit about who Bathsheba was and what really happened to the Perron family.
Bathsheba was not an Arnold. She was not a Richardson. She was married to Judson Sherman, and she was born of a union between the Thayer and the Taft families, both of whom were prominent families in Providence. In fact, those names are all over Brown University, the streets going through, and you know, they were very well-known, well-established families. What brought her out to the woods to marry a gentleman farmer, none of us will ever know. I think the mistake that was made is that Mrs. Warren, through her intuiting that Bathsheba had something to do with what was happening in the farmhouse, she took it that extra leap to blaming her for everything that was happening. And I just don't believe that. Nobody in our family believes that. First and foremost, because Bathsheba lived from 1812 to 1885. She died of a stroke and paralysis. Her vital organs shut down. The spirit that was haunting and taunting my mother clearly and obviously had a broken neck. And the only one that Mr. McEachin had ever told us about that had hanged was Mrs. John Arnold. Apparently, according to him, had hanged herself in the barn in 1797 at the age of 93, supposedly because her husband had died and she was so bereft that she did not want to go on.
Now, walking in about halfway down, over here on the left-hand side, this is where she's buried. You can see right about the center of your screen, there's a stone that's missing. This is where Bathsheba, the witch, is buried. I know I said that her stone was stolen, but there's also the possibility that the town removed her stone because of all the attention that she was getting, or all of the attention the cemetery in town was getting because of the movie The Conjuring. I mean, after all, she was portrayed as the witch, the person who was haunting the Perron family in the movie The Conjuring. So it would also make sense that they just took it for safekeeping, so a cemetery does not get desecrated. But this is it, her final resting place.
And again, this is all speculation. We don't know. None of them ever walked up to us and said, "Oh, hello, my name is." You know, we don't know. It's like putting together a multi-dimensional puzzle and trying to make all the pieces fit. Mrs. Arnold was the mistress of the house. She perhaps perceived herself as such, and that's why she targeted my mother, because she had a thing for my father, and she coveted us, the children, but she wanted my mother gone. Whoever that apparition was wanted my mother out of that house. But it wasn't Bathsheba. Bathsheba was accused of apparently she was at the farmhouse and an infant in her care died. That's what Mr. McEachern told us. Again, could just be rumor and innuendo.
Right.
There was never any proof that she did anything to harm anyone. But she was accused of practicing witchcraft. She was accused of selling her soul to the devil for eternal youth and beauty, that the baby was sacrifice for Satan's favor. You know, it was a very dangerous time to throw the word witch around. Women 100 years before had been murdered in Salem for using that word. And it was a horrible thing to have hanging over her.
Now, if you're standing in the middle of the cemetery looking at Bathsheba's grave, to the left of it, you're going to see these 3 stones. Now, these are her kids. And even though her stone is gone, you can see that it says son of or daughter of, I think it's Jedson and Bathsheba Sherman. Now here's a close-up of Edward Francis, son of Jedson and Bathsheba Sherman, died March 15th, 1848, aged 1 year and 2 months. And there's a little quote underneath it: "Weep not for babes, for they are blessed, and in their Savior's arms do rest." To the left of Edward is Julia, daughter of Jedson and Bathsheba Sherman, died August 8th, can't read that, aged 2 years, 5 months, and 23 days. Sweet little saint, to heaven she's gone, and left her friends behind to mourn. And between Edward and Bathsheba is this one here. I think it says George. Other than that, it's a little hard to read. It probably has more weathering than most of them, but I do like that little scarecrow right next to him. It really stinks that her stone is gone, but other members of the family are here. There's Judson, still intact, protected, and Georgiana. This looks like pretty much every person in here is a Sherman. Now here's the thing about Bathsheba and the story in The Conjuring. Again, I can't stress this enough. The story of The Conjuring that we all know is based off of the Warrens' case files, not the family that's been living there for 10 years. Now, in the movie Bathsheba, she's the witch who's haunting and torturing the family. Now, how did Bathsheba, this person living here in this town, come to be that person whenever, according to the family, they never made themselves known? Instead, Andrea, after sitting and talking with her, she said that it was a very motherly figure. Well, one day when Warren was sitting talking with Andrea's mother, supposedly the story goes, her mother had these pinpricks, if you will, almost like the size of like a sewing or like a crochet needle in her leg. And when Lorraine Warren saw it, she said, "Oh my God, that reminds me of a woman who lived here in this town that she's already done research on, that supposedly killed one of her kids by stabbing the child in the back of the head with like a crochet needle, something that big." So she put 2 and 2 together, and that's how Bathsheba Sherman came to be haunting the Perron family. Again, strictly Hollywood, all Hollywood.
You know, Mrs. Warren said to me, some 40 years after the last time I saw her, a few months before The Conjuring opened, Warner Brothers Studios invited her and invited me to have a private screening of the film prior to its premiere. And she said to me that day that she had regrets. She felt like she and Ed had the best of intentions to try to help our family, but they were in over their heads the moment they crossed the threshold of that house, and they didn't understand what they were walking into. They weren't prepared. And she does have regrets, particularly about the night of the seance. And, you know, God rest her soul, she has passed away now. She's with Ed. They're on the other side.
Magical, enchanting about being here in Rhode Island at this time of year, with the weather, the wind, the leaves, the smell, and the fact that we are visiting the farmhouse from The Conjuring that inspired the movie The Conjuring, that the Perron family lived for 10 years of their life, haunted by an entity and having these crazy experiences. These things are real. And it blows my mind that we walk these steps of history every single day. Now there's one more thing I want to do before we head out, and that's try to line up some photos. Now, if you remember at the very end of the movie, during the credits, they did this amazing thing where they would show a picture of Patrick Wilson, and then they would show who he was really supposed to be, which was Ed Warren. They did the same thing for all the different characters. And then they showed pictures of the family standing out front of the farmhouse. Now, today, this is the front. And I came here and I was like, okay, I want to line up these famous photos that I remember, but it didn't really line up. There's a door here, there's 2 windows. And if we walk back this way, there's another door with 2 windows, but still, it just didn't line up. So I just got done talking with Corey, and he confirmed what I thought after walking around the house, that those pictures were taken back here against this side of the house. Now, a lot has definitely changed. A lot has changed. But what I'm going to do now is we're going to try to recreate the family photos of the Perron family from right here.
Okay. Is it recording?
Yes, yes. So it's not going to be perfect because the house has changed so much. But if you come this way, baby girl, there's a family photo of them standing in front of this door. It's a photo. So we can't, they're kind of set in like a V, like you would
It
imagine.
used to be steps.
Yeah, like almost like a bird formation.
Yeah.
But we're gonna stand here too, same kind of photo. Look at that. Right?
Such big nerds.
Freaking nerds.
Ginormous nerds.
So you can see the door. It's going to be like that. Okay. And obviously we're doing this with the help of Mandy and Eric because we only have 2 arms each. But standing right about here, this time the camera's facing that way and they're looking over this way towards the road. Again, it's not gonna match up perfectly. So much has changed, but this is where those family photos were taken. Walking history to the finest, right? Oh, you feel that breeze?
Woohoo, that is a fall brisk breeze. If ever I felt one.
It's very haunting indeed. Cool.
That was the perfect time for that breeze too.
With that being said, from the world of The Conjuring, I can officially say this. The movie The Conjuring is based off of the case files of the
Yes.
Warrens.
Yes.
Our
On this
video,
house.
The Conjuring house, this house, is all based off of the case files of the Perron family. How about that? With that being said, happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Wherever I come, bad luck is coming my way. Wherever I go, hard luck is there to stay. Good luck never stays a day. Bad luck's always coming my way.